Hello, you're listening to Digital Disruptors, a PMW mini-series featuring winners from this year's 30 Under 30 Performance Marketing Awards and addressing the gap between this generation and ones that have been in the industry years and years before them. In this episode, I'm joined by Babajide Sotande-Peters, Senior Manager Global Programmatic Innovation at Team X Omnicom, Milica Lukic, Account Director at Adform, and Sophie Marsh-Baldry, Programmatic Account Manager at Azerion UK. We spoke about how programmatic advertising has evolved over the years, why it still can't stand on its own against other channels, and the importance of human touch in a world where AI is taking over. It was a very insightful discussion, so make sure you stay tuned. Millie, Sophie, Babs, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you all here. Now, you all specialise in programmatic, or part of your specialties are in programmatic advertising, which I think is a very exciting area of the performance marketing industry. Now, I first wanted to know, what was your first introduction into the world of programmatic advertising, and how have you seen it evolve since then?
I actually started off in programmatic through an internship, which I thought was really interesting. I was meant to do my A-levels in 2020, but obviously those were cancelled. So I quickly had to find a solution in terms of what I wanted to go into work. And the internship offer kind of came up and I started off in operations. I kind of dabbled across managed service and programmatic, but programmatic really kind of took my liking. So we started off in that, and yeah, I've kind of gone from there really.
Mine's slightly different. So I had exposure to programmatic advertising when I was at university. So I studied advertising management and digital communications, which I grew to realise once getting into the industry I was one of the very few people to study advertising. But programmatic advertising was one of the lectures that I had. So that was when I was initially introduced to it. Which seemed like very overwhelming at the time. But when I joined Wavemaker, which was my first job, then I had a bit more kind of hands-on experience and exposure there.
My first exposure to programmatic came when I was on a desperate search to find something to do after graduating from university. And I walked into the offices at OMD and MIA in summer 2018. And it was one of their graduate assessment days where they kind of sat everyone down and took them through the different disciplines across social and programmatic. I had no previous knowledge of like the different intricacies of online media and all the kind of spaces that came with it. And then went into a room and talked with a programmatic manager at the time. And he explained to me the sort of fundamentals of programmatic. And then my career took a turn and I ended up spending the year in New York doing something completely different and completely forgot about everything that I'd been told previously. But then I came back and really got into the world of media and programmatic through my first job in industry, which came at what was then called the Rubicon Project, which has now been blossomed into this omni-channel SSP, very well known as Magnite. And then I learned all the kind of in-depth fundamentals of programmatic media and all the components that came with it.
So that's interesting. You had a gap and then you came back into this world of programmatic. What was it that dragged you back there?
I think when I graduated, having observed the different options in the world of work and having observed what friends and other colleagues had done, I had an idea of like what the key fundamentals I wanted in a role. And the world of advertising fit a lot of that in the case of like high level problem solving, storytelling, just being in front of clients and presenting. And programmatic was essentially just a conduit towards that end goal. Being able to look at data and insights and tell stories and put together graphs and present those to clients was the major sort of appealing factor. And I think initially I wanted to go into the creative side of advertising, as everyone does, but then you find out that it's terribly competitive and probably not the best of treatment in terms of all sorts of welfare and remuneration. So the ad tech side and programmatic in particular was very much the happy medium of being close enough to creative, but also playing to my strengths of being a bit data savvy and operational and being able to think conceptually as well.
Would you say that programmatic advertising is a suitable and maybe a bit of an easier entry point for performance marketers that are still very early at the start of their career, especially if you're more under Gen Z or millennial, where you've kind of grown up in this digital world and you might be a bit more digitally fluent? Would you say it's a bit more of a suitable entry point?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I mean, it's no shock that I think us as a generation, we've grown up with technology at our actual fingertips. I think I was teaching my mum how to use a TV remote at 4. So we've always kind of had it around us, from, apps to phones to screens everywhere. So I think we're a lot more knowledgeable and more comfortable with using technology. And I think we've become quite analytical and very comfortable with data, because I guess we share our data all the time. It's become such a foreign, such a kind of known concept to us. It doesn't feel as foreign. So I think, there's a general level of comfortability there and willingness to test out data, to test out kind of different strategies around kind of programmatic advertising, for sure.
As the programmatic landscape has developed, even in the 6 or so years I've been in the space, it seemed to cover all the different aspects of media. So a few weeks ago, we had another intake of potential kind of recent grads who wanted to start in their first kind of roles in media. And a lot of them came with the sort of conception that social was the way to go. They know about TikTok, they know about kind of Meta, Facebook, Instagram. But the land of programmatic sort of covers a lot of those sort of grounds in terms of the way that you approach audience targeting, reaching the right audience and hitting certain kind of metrics and campaign elements, and the environments you kind of look to draw yourself towards, and the environments that your advertisers within using programmatic are so varied, from the high-end websites to now your phones, your screens and your connected television devices, that is a very quite easy sell when you're positioning it to someone just coming into the industry. And that might not have been the case 5 or 6 years ago, but as the technology is developed and the kind of interlinking between the different channels comes more apparent, there's just a lot more that is beneficiary towards someone very much early on in their career to start in this channel.
Great. Yeah, I think kind of adding on to Millie's point, Gen Z, obviously, we've kind of grown up with it. We kind of had the benefit of growing up with it a little bit later on and still having a kind of green grass childhood. I was someone that had absolutely no experience with any type of tech before. I'd had no idea what I wanted to do. I'd studied media at A-level, but the fact that I had quite a personable kind of personality and I was willing to learn, programmatic advertising, it still had that level of like creativity that I wanted. The media industry is just so sociable that it wasn't going to be a normal corporate 9 to 5. And I think Gen Z are so used to different interfaces and the use of tech that once you've gotten over the programmatic ecosystem, you've learned the flow charts and the acronyms, and you've still got that initiative to kind of be a problem solver. It's such a great base, and I think learning programmatic is such a transferable skill across all of media in general. Once you've got those like operational skills, you can move into sales, you can move into the creative side of things if you want to do that, you can go into marketing. So I do think that starting off in programmatic, you're at the forefront of the industry and you've also got a complete set of transferable skills with you.
That's great. That's been a great promotion from all three of you on programmatic and why you should enter programmatic.
Yeah.
Do you think that as marketers that are still very early in their careers or still quite young across the industry, do you think that you prioritize personalized and more hyper-targeted experiences a bit more than other marketers that are from different generations? Or do you think that it's something that is becoming more common across the board and potentially a trend that we're seeing?
It's so dependent on the type of environment within the space you find yourselves in. So a lot of the time, when I started off, obviously, at a company like Magnite, where you're serving publishers and helping to monetize their imagery and websites, you're dealing with tools and technologies that you feel are common ground. And as a business, you feel are common ground that people should all be utilizing and buying into. And that's the framework that you want to have across the board. But then when you move over to the other side of the industry, where you're working directly with advertisers and their kind of issues, and you're dealing with different sectors. So one day you could be with an FMCG client, the other day it's an entertainment client, another one is kind of like fast moving consumer, like kind of automotive, which is the vehicle I'm in now. There's just so many different added elements. You're thinking about your client's competitors, you're thinking about the target audience and how they overlap. And that's where the kind of nuances in the approach and whether it's a hyper-focused, personalised experience comes into play, or whether it's more commonplace and kind of basically you're looking at more technical operational tools and use things such as AI that are going to help them drive and sell products and services that they want you to help them promote. So it really just depends on the type of environment you come in. I'm always a big proponent in terms of creativity and uniqueness in every kind of story, but that the strength in that and the value that comes with that comes from the value that your client puts on you, how much they're willing to invest in those experiences and how much they're willing to kind of try different things and try and fail sometimes.
And do you find that they're often open to trying new things, or do they want to stick to what they know works?
Yeah, again, very much dependent on the type of client and the type of environment they find themselves in, and the nature of the campaigns they find themselves in. So within our disciplines, you have like the 3 stages of the marketing funnel: awareness, consideration, and conversion. And you have those different elements, and conversion campaigns are more focused on technical aspects that can help reinforce messages to establish audiences. But then in the awareness portion, you have the ability to capture audiences through the use of different channels. And that's where the most prominent brands and the ones that I've worked with are open to creativity. So creativity is ambiguous in the terms that when you think of visual brand-led creativity, all kind of top brands are led into that. But then there's also the creativity at the bottom in terms of the tools and technologies that you kind of mix together to drive those end outcomes and goals for clients that want to sell different products and services.
In terms of your day-to-day and the teams that you're working within, do you find that the other people that are part of your team tend to be within the same age group as you, within the same generation, working in programmatic? Or do you have a mix of people from different generations and people from your generation? And if there isn't a mix, do you think that could potentially be causing a problem in terms of kind of not being able to have that perspective from that group?
When I first started out at Nexon, which was formerly Unreally, I actually did work with Millie, and we had a really young operations team. We had a few young people on the programmatic side, and that was super refreshing. And I think stepping into the world of work, it was nice to kind of have older mentors in a sense and work with really similar young people. But now at Unreally, it really is such a mixture of ages, and I think that the industry in itself really should like open the floodgates in terms of having young people coming up and coming, because programmatic is going to be at the forefront of artificial intelligence and things like that. We all know it's kind of coming, and you really need the Gen Zers who are completely moldable to kind of ride that train right at the front.
Yeah, I think I would completely agree. Where I work at the moment at Adform, I feel like I'm one of the youngest people that work there, and I tend to work with people who have probably been a bit more experienced in the industry. So from that experience, I think it's important to have a mix of both, because as kind of young marketeers, we're coming in with fresh ideas and potentially have a lot more exposure to programmatic ads from a consumer perspective. I don't like to use ad blocks or anything, because I like to see what the ads look like based on my behaviours or how I'm being retargeted and how that influences the type of messaging I receive. So you come in with that additional insight. But I think it's been absolutely important to have people who are a bit more experienced within the industry work alongside you, because they've been able to see how programmatic has grown over time, where it initially started off as a very niche kind of solution, and how's now been absolutely built and integrated into media plans. So they come in with that experienced perspective, and it's entirely valuable because they can tell you how it's evolved, what does work, what doesn't work, because they were around at a time where programmatic was very manual compared to how automated it is now. So I think, insight from both perspectives is quite a lot. Quite valuable, certainly in this industry.
Being one of the youngest people on your team, what would you say are some of the top things that you've learned from more experienced marketers, and what kind of stuff were you able to teach them?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that I learned is you'll never know everything. You have to constantly try and educate yourself. We work in an industry, which I quite like, is extremely fast moving, ever changing.
Yeah.
There's always, like I said, there's an acronym, there's a new partner, there's a new DSP, there's constantly something happening, so you kind of need to be in the know of what's going on and constantly informed. Another key point I've learned as well is building relationships is absolutely crucial in this industry. It's about people you know and building that level of trust, and we move around so much. I mean, I've bumped into Sophie today and that's kind of a testament to that. But then in terms of what I guess might have taught some other people is, I guess, that willingness to experiment and try. And like I said, as a younger generation, we're a lot more experimental, we're a lot more comfortable with data, with numbers, we're very analytical, we're very familiar with it, we use it a lot in our own free time, we will create our own content, or I like to think so, on social media, so we have exposure in that sense, where we kind of know what works, how things are received by others, so it's nice to bring in that kind of fresh and newer perspective.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree. The kind of stance on where older marketers kind of take the developments of, like, as you said earlier, the hyper targeted like ads, I totally agree with Millie. I absolutely love the fact that I'm hyper targeted on my mobile phone. I've recently moved house and I don't have to kind of dig for every single website to find the furniture I want. I've got your Dunelm, your H&M home right on my Instagram as soon as I open it up. But on the flip side of that, I've got colleagues that I work really closely with that are only a few years older than me, and they absolutely despise it. I think they see it as a massive breach of privacy, and particularly the kind of thoughts around apps that have your microphone on and they're listening to you talking, and then you all of a sudden 20 minutes later have an ad for something that you've just said in a conversation. I think that is kind of stepping the line a little bit, and I think people are still a little bit fearful of that. But over the next 5 years, I think, you know, AI tools using ads and things like that are really going to be something that's definitely accepted by Gen Z. But yeah, I think the older generation is still very fearful of, you know, how much we're getting them data wise.
I mean, I was literally talking to someone yesterday about how ASOS also does the hyper targeting and hyper personalization, where it's like, if you look at enough clothes that fit your style, then you have the more like this page, which I love. I think that's a great way of connecting with your audience and really kind of understanding what they want to see. But that's interesting that you say that ones that are only a few years older than you are a bit more hesitant, feel like it's more of an invasion of privacy.
Yeah, I think I fit into that sort of kind of bucket. I think. Happy to pay for YouTube Premium to avoid all YouTube ads. Just tired of like the obstructive sort of kind of constant retargeting of different clothes or services. I know I like my clothes, but it's just like gets too much, and the temptation is too much around payday and all that kind of things. And yeah, I go into the office every day to tell the client on how they should be investing money into all of these channels and using them effectively for their campaigns to help people buy their stuff that they might not need. So it's kind of an interesting space. In terms of the overriding point around kind of age demographics and variations, I think there's some similarities that I have with the two ladies here in terms of when I was at Magnite, more so when the younger people there. But then as I've approached kind of and developed and moved on to different businesses, there's been interesting sort of kind of levels of interaction or levels of kind of intake that you see across different age demographics. So I know at Group M, you had people, they work closely with a company called Multiverse who did their apprenticeship program. So I remember the shock on my face when I saw people that were in the office next to me. I saw I'm born in 1996, and you're going there as someone who's born in 2002, and I was thinking, oh god. And then you start to really feel old even though you're not that old. And on the flip side, they did an interesting sort of kind of scheme for like a restart scheme. I can't remember the specific name, but really it was geared towards women in particular re-entering the world of work and going into this sort of digital environment and giving them opportunities for that kind of forefront. There is a sort of slight ageism in the way that we approach media and media conversations in general because of like the generational divide, the way they consume information and the way the information is digested. But it is within all of it a room for anyone to kind of come into the environment, kind of pick and upskill themselves in certain kind of dynamics that will serve them well and serve people that they serve well as well. So there's a lot that kind of goes into different dynamics, and the best companies embrace like the perspectives of all and kind of use that to fuel better outcomes for the people, for the clients and the companies that they serve.
it's also like what you were saying before about things kind of depending on the situation, depending on the client. It doesn't matter where it's like, older marketers, younger marketers, more experienced, not experienced. Everyone's going to kind of cater towards the client and what they want. And if there's a certain channel that's growing, or if there's a certain area that they need to be more trained up in, like AI, for example, they will go to that. Yeah. And it's one of those things where having a mix of those teams and a mix of different ages and different marketers is going to be very beneficial, because then you're able to just teach one another and learn from one another rather than kind of work differently.
I think that, there is always space for every single age within programmatic. You're never going to be ahead of programmatic. You're never going to know everything. There are solutions that you might have put in place 6 months ago that are completely obsolete because the tech is just completely new. Everyone is at, the forefront. Everyone's being, moving forward. And I just think that although Gen Z might have a more open approach to the tech changes and the interface changes and everything that's kind of driving forward, there are a lot of older marketers that love the pace of it and that would, you're never going to come into the space feeling like everyone knows everything and you don't.
It's a industry that attracts the curious, and curiosity doesn't really have an age limit within it.
Yeah.
You can be a recent kind of graduate or recent person who's just left school and be curious about how different platforms and services roll into play, and there's a role and place for it within you. Or you can be like the high-end sort of kind of country manager of a big company, or high-end kind of head of department, and then you're curious about what the kids are listening to. And I've overheard some hilarious conversations about marketers on our floor wondering who's this rapper that referenced Mercedes-Benz in their music video. Or the funniest one I ever heard is like a very senior kind of now retired head of department in my role at Magnite, who was looking to buy tickets to see Dave at the O2 whilst on a important kind of team internal call. So it's an industry that attracts the curious and those who are curious about life and those around them and everything that comes up to date in terms of like human truths and social truths and the technical advancements that go in when it comes to advertising and programmatic in general. They'll be the ones who have the most fruitful time and reap the benefits of being in an industry like this.
I remember I had to teach my team what the very demure trend was on social, and everyone was kind of like a bit shocked. Then they ended up embracing it, and I also made them all do the day in the life videos as well.
I love it.
We had something similar. I heard some of our younger sales girls trying to teach a head of sales what being a brat was and what brat summer was, and that was brilliant to just sit back and listen to.
I wanted to ask about programmatic in kind of like the wider context of a marketing strategy. So do you think focusing on just programmatic advertising is enough to create a sustainable marketing strategy, or do you need to be combining it with other things for it to work for you and work for your brand?
Again, it's kind of my favorite word. It depends really on the kind of content situation. I think
it's true though.
Yeah, my stance is like programmatic is advanced to the stage where it can be at the forefront of lots of marketing strategies. But again, depending on the environment that you find yourself within, there may be opportunities that exist within other channels and interlinking with other channels that may make you adjust slightly to achieve certain goals. So you can have the perfect blend of online and offline media, and programmatic can still be at the forefront of that, where you're using kind of the tools and services available to you to reach and retarget and reinforce messaging for a big campaign. But I think when everyone kind of goes into this environment of advertising, they think about the great offline stories, whether it's like the cut and paste out of home advertising or the kind of hard and fast marketing campaigns that go on in the street where people do sort of brand experiences. And for me, the perfect campaigns roll those into one. Programmatic will still be there and it'll still always be a forefront, and even be more so. Now it stretches across into digital screens outdoors or connected TV devices. So it'll always be there, but it's probably not this phase now where you can solely focus on it in just one channel.
No, I completely agree. I think the use of traditional media is quintessential for a lot of brands. You've got brands like British Airways, who are known for their big, billboards and things like that. You see them absolutely everywhere. but even they're moving to like digital out of home. So there was that really iconic advert outside of Heathrow Airport where that boy was pointing at the planes and they would show you what plane was running. So I definitely think that, you know, there is quite a shift to digital out of home. I work with Hawk DSP and that's kind of their bread and butter. And the campaigns that we're able to run with them are really interesting. So we ran a campaign with Free Now where we were running on the tube stations and we tapped into the TfL's API system. And we actually ran the ads when the trains were delayed, which was obviously all the time. But it's interesting how we're now actually able to kind of run data across, you know, out of home, whereas before, you know, that traditionally has just been a static kind of way of advertising. But overall, I think you can't have one without the other. And there really is a consumer story, and a lot of that does end up digital. You know, you can target the majority of the population just out like statically, but as a consumer journey, I think brands really want to be closer to their customer using data-driven approaches, you know, retargeting, and I think moving across to digital and doing that across everything, you know, every other format is great for all brands.
I think targeting people when trains are delayed is one of the best strategies I've heard about, because that makes a lot of sense when people have nothing to do. Yeah,
I'll put that towards the 7 stars planners. They came up with that one.
But yeah, to echo both of your words, I'd completely agree. I think it's important for us to understand how each channel plays into the kind of marketing mix and the different roles that it plays, and I do definitely think that they can work together. I mean, we have like traditional TV that's been hugely successful for awareness campaigns. I mean, I think we can all resonate and remember the Compare the Market jingle. Whenever you want to look for insurance, we all go to comparethemarket.com. So I think there is definitely a place for traditional channels, and it does work. And it allows for that broad reach that you can achieve with high impressions. But I think with programmatic, there's a lot more that you can do. You can be heavily targeted, a lot more data driven. So that plays a role in a very different way. And I think the two of them should technically work together because they supplement each other. I mean, we ran a campaign with Adform last year where one of our clients was running a TV ad and in the first couple of weeks delivered huge impressions, and then you see that drop off, and we were able to activate CTV, which helps kind of increase the incremental reach with that campaign that we achieved. And helped kind of increase the messaging and be able to reach users who might have been exposed to that ad or been shown interest in similar products. I mean, it's no news that we're all looking at multiple screens at the same time. When we're watching TV, I'm certainly on my phone looking for stuff that I can buy and probably have my iPad on the corner doing something else, and then my Alexa in the background. So there's so many touch points. And as consumers, we don't consume media in silos, we consume them together. So there's no reason why, as marketers, we shouldn't then deliver the message across different touch points, essentially.
Now, with programmatic advertising, because it's still kind of more of a newer channel, wouldn't say it's a new one, but it's a newer channel in the world of marketing, it doesn't come without risks. And there's quite a lot of risks with programmatic advertising. What would you say are the top ones? And how do you kind of manage around them or deal with them?
I think the biggest one that still persists now is the concerns around privacy. Mm-hmm. So you're exposed to a lot of data and a lot of kind of sources and a lot of ways to facilitate that data. And whether it's regulations that exist from different markets and environments, or whether it's the general concerns of the clients that you're operating on behalf of, you always have to be mindful about how that data is utilised and where the flow comes from. So I've worked in different environments where you have certain requirements to use certain pieces of data or kind of certain things you have to cross in terms of security checks before you can activate certain campaigns or use certain partners. And that's just general the way of the land, especially for established brands who want to maintain a level of suitability and decorum with the way that they activate their certain kind of campaigns. There's also, again, brand safety and suitability, which I think everyone's aware of their advancements that come in that space in terms of the use of AI tools and use of different kind of filtering tools and platforms to help advance those mechanisms. But as programmatic evolves and kind of flourishes, there'll undoubtedly be other kind of brand suitability and safety concerns that come to the forefront that we have to tackle and come up with new solutions to counteract as we scale this sort of initiative upwards.
Would you agree with that? Would you say?
Yeah, I definitely think ad fraud is on the forefront of a lot of people's minds with AI up and coming. It's kind of a bit of a scary concept, but I think fraud in general, obviously across every single industry, not just media, is always evolving. I don't think, my grandparents 5 to 10 years ago thought they'd have an AI person on the phone ringing them up saying their first and last name and asking for the 3 digits on the back of their card. But it's something that is fast paced and moving, and we have people within the market. You've got your Double Verify, IIS, and they've been innovative as it is. We can trust them to kind of push that innovation to kind of keep up with these things. And from a publisher standpoint as well, at Azerion we have a really strong team that work across brand safety. We ensure that everything is brand safe before it even ever gets to the DSP, and I think as long as we continue as an industry to kind of push for that and keep at the front of it, we've got so many great people in market. I don't really see how we can't kind of keep up with the times.
I guess it's like a trial and error as well, and
always
it's gonna be
Yeah, completely agree. But yeah, we work in such an industry where we're lucky that technology is advancing at such a fast rate, faster than it ever has. But obviously with that progression there comes with a lot of risks, both privacy and ad fraud. And obviously advancements in AI have kind of propelled the risks a lot further, because you need to verify whether it's an actual human being that's viewing the ad at the end of the day, whether the ads are transacting as they're meant to, and whether they're being actually measured, so whether a viewed impression is actually a viewed impression. So I think as an industry we always have to work hard to keep on top of it. And there needs to be industry-wide accountability. So it's quite great to hear that everyone kind of likes to be involved and ensure that at the end of the day we're responsible and delivering ads the way that we're meant to. But yeah, as an industry, I think we just need to work harder on standardised procedures, and just having essentially rules and regulations that we all adhere to.
Just because the three of you have all mentioned AI.
That's why we're
Let the podcast end without talking about AI. With AI being more and more used in this space, especially in the performance marketing space and in programmatic, would you say that there's a risk of it leading to a loss of human and personal touch? And if so, what can you do to kind of avoid that happening and bring back that human touch?
Yeah, I think the introduction of AI across programmatic is inevitable. We're already seeing tools. I know the Trade Desk has got their COA and COCI optimizations, and I do think it's something that is definitely going to be introduced kind of everywhere quite quickly. But I'd love to see, across the programmatic account managers and everyone else to be across the AI innovation tools and still keep that touch with agencies and clients in that kind of respect. I do think there is always going to be the need for human intervention, and you're always still going to have your managed services out there where you've got specialized people just working across a campaign and ensuring it's delivering. But when programmatic was introduced, it is already an automated tool, and you do now have that transparency element, and there are still going to be needs for us to continue those conversations and continue the kind of human element. I don't feel like media is a space where we can kind of take that away from people. It's just such a sociable industry. It would be a proper shame if it did.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think AI has definitely improved our efficiencies. It's been very time saving, not just from like a media perspective, but also from like the extra kind of campaign planning that you might need to do, or whether you need to gather insights and understand how you want to grow a client strategically. I think AI has definitely a lot of benefits, but I think completely right, there is a lot of concerns around whether it's becoming impersonable. Just from like personal use, when you chuck something into ChatGPT and the response that comes back is very robotic and missing personality. So I think the way to tackle it is to always have a human within a certain cycle or framework. That's always cross-checking, or like when it comes to optimizations, are those correct? Because from your own personal experience whether certain changes will have a positive impact on metrics, or whether you have additional detail that the AI might not have considered. And definitely from a creative perspective as well, when building creatives or adding messaging, I think there always needs to be a human element to it, so that we don't lose that creative side to it. We don't lose that brand resonance that we can deliver, because we can use AI and chuck a super personalized ad in front of someone, but that might not necessarily work. I think there needs to be an element of storytelling, which I like to think that AI can't quite replicate just yet, but I hope not.
And in just a very cringe way and very obviously.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I don't think it replicates human interaction perfectly.
Yeah, I think you guys have all summed it up correctly. There's two elements to it. There's the operational implication of AI, and then there's the visual kind of effects of AI. Operationally, in programmatic, AI and machine learning has been at the forefront of what made the industry what it is, and regardless of our cares and concerns, it's going to continue to develop and evolve, utilizing AI related tools to make things more operationally efficient. And that serves both the industry and the clients that are investing in an industry like this. So that's always going to be inevitable. I think the concerns come under visual, what can be seen, AI replacing human interaction and human touch. And I think for me, the most visible kind of concerns around AI are around that element of content generation, things that can be bulk created en masse for operational efficiency. But the concern is that it's visible and it's kind of replacing that human touch that is so key and important to any sort of effective brand story. And in the current terms, we can quite obviously see when something is generated being in this industry, and it's quite obvious, and our clients can see it, and they're not as in tune with it as needs be. They may kind of utilize certain tools for operational purposes to kind of bulk create things en masse and have like different creatives created for different environments. But ultimately, it's no substitute to kind of unique human touch, which takes time and care and negotiation and debate to put together. So hopefully, like you guys said, long may that continue, and that's the kind of key element that we look to maintain. But operationally, AI has already been at the forefront of what made this industry what it is, and it will continue to make and progress in that kind of way and form.
We're going to play a very quick game of Myth or Fact, and it's going to be Myth or Fact Programmatic Edition. So don't be too nervous. It's not trying to catch you out on whether you know your business or not. But
Tell my manager to stop listening.
It's just more for having fun. Number 1, programmatic advertising is fully automated and requires no human intervention.
Myth? Yeah.
Big fat myth.
Yeah.
100%.
Big fat myth. Why is that?
I think when programmatic came into the space, I think, like I touched on earlier, the reason why agencies loved it and the industry loved it is the transparency and that human interaction. And I know personally, I love the fact that we get to, kind of chat to agencies about what's going on. And, personally, I love being able to be creative with optimizations and, solutions for partners, which I don't feel like other people would necessarily think about. And I just think that the complete use of AI to do that, it would just completely lack any kind of human creativity in that element, which both these guys have kind of touched on. We still have that kind of spark over AI at the minute.
You're correct. It is a myth. Second one is programmatic can be used for offline media buys like TV and radio.
I think it's fact, as in terms of like TV and buying TV and looking at incremental growth and reach on TV can be utilized with programmatic, and more so you're going to be in those environments. And similarly, programmatic buys have evolved to audio and the buying of different slots and time frames using programmatic tools and technologies and platforms is now available, although there's a lot of kind of work and advancements to be done in that space over the next few years.
You're right. That is fact. Programmatic advertising is only for large companies with big budgets.
I think that's a myth.
That's a myth.
Yeah. I think it might be a common misconception that you need a lot of budget to invest into programmatic. I think there is obviously recommendations as to what your starting budget would be, but it's obviously dependent on the type of campaign that you want to run. If it's an awareness campaign, then you tend to need a bit more push behind it to reach, because you want to reach a higher group of people. But, with retargeting campaigns, you can get away with, I hope my client's not listening, get away with slightly smaller budgets sometimes. Because I think with programmatic, there's a lot of opportunity to test. You can do A/B testing or, trying more niche, like you said, kind of targeting and things that you haven't really thought about. So you don't want to risk and put too much money behind it because you are trialing something new. So I think you can have smaller budget line items to test and trial things out.
Well, you're right. That is a myth. programmatic advertising can help improve customer experience and personalization?
That's a fact. So customer experience, utilizing the tools and services available to us in the programmatic space definitely help. Like, for example, things such as frequency capping can help not be too intrusive to the user experience, whereas retargeting, as Millie mentioned, can help reinforce messages to help them drive customers to things that they'll be interested in. And in terms of personalization, we have kind of good established partners who operate within the personalization space and help with things such as dynamic creative that can help dynamically target or reinforce messaging to depending on environments, time of day, location, and other relevant contexts.
You're right, that is a fact. And it says the personalized approach from programmatic can be shown to increase engagement rates and boost ROI as well. The last one is programmatic advertising is all about display ads.
That's a big myth.
Yeah, absolute myth. Absolutely not. I think maybe initially a lot of people were running MPUs, a lot of publishers, but these days at Azerion we like to think of ourselves as an omni, channel partner. We have our fingers in every single pie. Some people might say some people might say, jack of all trades, master of none, but we are a master of all. We've got specialists across everything, but you can run hugely successful campaigns across CTV, digital out of home, audio, you can do dynamic skins, and we're seeing brands kind of expand that, and display is always there for us to kind of run across, and there is a hell of a lot of reach there, but we're creative. This is a creative industry for a reason. We found loads of solutions and different solutions for people to run across, and I do think that people are kind of realizing that sometimes display it can be seen as a little bit of an immature maybe ad slot, and people are used to seeing that when they're scrolling through an ad site, and they're finding different ways to kind of raise awareness using bigger slots on websites or running CTV. And I think in general it's definitely not just display.
I mean, the first time I ever heard about programmatic advertising was through audio.
Yeah.
So, which is not where you expect to hear it the first time. But
definitely.
I was working with in the podcasting space and podcast editorial brand, and I heard about audio advertising, programmatic, and that was like literally just the first time. So, makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, 5 out of 5 for all of you. You're all very knowledgeable about programmatic. That's all for this episode. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks so much.
Thank you,
Reem.
Thanks for having us.
It's lovely to meet you guys.
And that's a wrap on Digital Disruptors. Thank you once again to all the winners that have joined me here in the studio, and of course for Haymarket's studio manager, Nath Pal, for editing and producing this podcast. You can listen back to all 6 episodes on the PMW feed, and make sure to stay subscribed to listen to the main show, PMW Unlocked, which comes out fortnightly.